This one? Hello? It's on. It's on. Okay, salam and welcome to the stunning setting of the National Museum of Qatar for Exploring Islam's Sports Without Boundaries Willpower event, which is hosted by the Exploring Islam Foundation and the Islam and Muslims Initiative. My name is Remona Aly. I'm a UK-based journalist, and I'm so honored to be with you today to host this afternoon in the beautiful city of Doha. I'd like to begin by introducing you to this groundbreaking campaign, which some of you may have seen around the city on billboards and at booths. The campaign launched at the start of the World Cup, so let's take a quick look at how it got started. Carry on. Okay. The Exploring Islam project is a joint media initiative powered by Exploring Islam Foundation and the Islam and Muslims Initiative. As mentioned, the campaign has been launched at the World Cup 2022 as an official resource seeking to raise awareness among football fans and any visitors to Doha on Islam and Muslims and Muslim cultures across the globe. The campaign consists of a website, which you can access by scanning the QR code on the screen behind me, as well as a national billboard campaign, information booths, and a roster of live events. Perhaps some of you even caught the global music sensations Maher Zain and Hamoud Al-Khuda in conversation at the Museum of Islamic Art last weekend. Well, in addition to all of that, we have another full week of events coming up. So if you'd like to see what else is on, please do scan the QR code and see the What's On section. Also, for any digital disciples, please follow Exploring Islam and the IMI on Instagram and Twitter, and do tag us if you're posting this afternoon, because we'd love to see how you're enjoying the event. So now I am thrilled to be joined this afternoon by two remarkable women. We're discussing the topic of willpower today and how, when channeled with conviction, it can change your destiny. Both of these inspiring speakers have applied this ethos to their personal lives as well as their professional careers. And I'm privileged to welcome our first speaker to the stage. She's a woman who is very versatile. She's a comedian, a model, an athlete, and a disability rights campaigner. She was featured in the BBC's 100 Most Influential Women Around the World in 2017, and she's the founder of the Equal Access Initiative. She's an extraordinary woman, and she's breaking through barriers and boundaries on a daily basis. And we're so pleased that she's here with us today to talk us through her journey. Please put your hands together for Nawaal Akram.
Do I have my clicker? Hi, everyone. Wait, can you hear me? Is it all good? Wait, is it working? Give me a... Sorry, guys. Technical stuff. All right, I guess we get the show going. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the lovely introduction. So, starting my journey, being born in Qatar, I'm born and brought up here. I'm one of the only child in my family was born with a disability. And even that itself was a journey itself. I felt like a first child there. I'm the middle child, so the firstborn is usually that experiment. And being the first in my family with disability was such a learning curve itself for everyone involved in this. My journey in sports, or I would like to say adventures to reach that journey, started from when I was 10 years old. So mine started when I started advocating for education, when that right was taken away. And at 13 years old, I was publicly advocating for education, and that made me involved in different communities within the country in the advocacy spaces, which led me finding out about the Paralympics. And from this, I was meeting different athletes, different communities. I was involved in the Qatar Cancer Society. Seeing athletes there made me want to be passionate to learn towards it. And itself, I joined the Qatar Paralympic Committee as an athlete. And sorry, should I click somewhere? So what I wanted to share is that I joined a sport, which is bocce. And bocce itself is a co-ed sport. It's a sport that's played by both genders. So regardless of your physical strength, this is focusing on your ability to concentrate on the target and shoot. So it was a sport where gender was not really a barrier. It was just something that we would have on your team, and you were an equal member to it. So this is just an example of that sport. I would like to play the next clip. So in this advocacy space, one of the big things that I need to share that it was very much a privilege being a disabled Muslim woman and having this supportive environment. And I think that is a privilege that a lot take for granted, and that I do too, that coming from a conservative environment, that I had such a supportive background, and something that we need to encourage in our Muslim communities as the spaces for how to have more people, especially Muslim disabled women, in those spaces, moving towards in the professional field in it. And you know, when I was transitioning from bocce, it kind of showed me how I could do other sports, and how those sports are so important in our community and the values that they bring in. Now, I started adapting different sports. So I started adapting parasailing, kayaking. I went kayaking on the daily in the mangroves. If you are new in Doha, I would really encourage you to go and try kayaking in the mangroves and Purple Island. So I would go in there on the daily. I would even do Zumba. So a part of Muscat, I started from Muscat District, Qatar, which is now Equal Access. And the reason of the transition that I wanted to be even more inclusive, but sticking to muscular dystrophy Qatar, was to raise awareness about muscular dystrophy and disability awareness. And sports is such a field that you can also meet people from different backgrounds, but also use it to raise awareness on key important issues, because it brings everyone from the community together over the sport they love. So I started doing Zumba and adapting it. We would have 100 to 200 people in each session. Yes, and this session particularly that you're seeing on the screen was 100 women in the Qatar National Library sitting down and doing adaptive Zumba, which is something that we would not think, a lot of people didn't really think about it or thought that was possible, but we kept doing it. So we raised awareness that yes, we can adapt sports together as a community to include everyone, even different ages. So when I say disability, I think sometimes we forget about the elderly of people or people who have invisible disabilities, who cannot stand up and do extreme sports or sports that everyone else does. So, and one of the big roles that these sports communities took, whether it was kayaking, parasailing, or even Zumba, was they were open to learning how to adapt something and how to include everyone in the community. But at the same, yes, this is me doing kayaking and taking a bunch of new people with it who never tried kayaking. So I kept organizing these. This is pre-COVID, obviously. So the thing is, one of the things planning all of these things is that people learned about invisible disabilities and how chronic conditions are not truly understood. So a lot of people on those photos had invisible disabilities, and even people who did not understand it understood it from these gatherings, because it was such a safe space provided for people to learn from each other, work with each other, and do the sport we all love, or trying it for the first time. So I think one of the big things that I want to bring in as a Muslim disabled woman is that there needs to be more safe spaces to develop talent so when I'm saying about developing talent is that we are not still at the level of globally where we have Muslim disabled women actively in participating in sports as a profession. There might be some availability as a hobby, but then again, when we create, sorry, I'm just looking down there and then looking down back in the audience. So yeah, so when I speak about safe spaces is that they don't get those equal opportunities as their male disabled peers, as because sometimes patriarchy seeps through even in the communities we think it would not be in there. So by global stats, we have seen that a lot of Muslim disabled women or disabled women in general are given less opportunities because of their gender. So even when you look into disability, it does have the gender aspect coming in, and that intersectionality sometimes people are not aware of, that it really matters. So when there are Muslim disabled women in sports, they need to be able to have those safe spaces because there are not enough maybe female trainers to train them. And when we fund sports development, we are not only giving women jobs, we are making them work with women who don't have disabilities. So it's a two-edged sword where we develop women from different backgrounds to have jobs that are included in the sports field, and they're able to be involved in an active community with dignity. And that is very important, that we look at the different parts of their identity, look at the cultural identity, look at the religious identity, and look at, of course, the gender, and how those three things play a very important role. And to look at the economic aspect of that too. So when we provide Muslim disabled women with safe spaces in different countries around the world, they're able to be active members, and participate in society, go on and play professional on the global stage. And that is very important to make sure that we have more Muslim disabled women included in women's rights when we talk about these safe spaces, looking at the intersectionality overall to see how all of these different identities coexist and work together to benefit everyone. So I think there's another aspect that I want to bring in is that, sorry, I'm going down, adding things in, but I think I want to conclude on the fact that when we develop safe spaces and we also give opportunities to more disabled women in these spaces, is that we're also reminding that in the next, even now in the next 3 years, due to the global events that are happening all over the world, we are seeing more than ever women becoming disabled, not just because of accidents that might happen, but also wars and conflicts that are happening. And those women and girls with refugees, with disabilities, need to be having safe spaces provided to them. And I think that is very important, that we don't only look far enough in different communities how sports is so important for them and how it can develop a community that works together to create understanding. It kind of lifts stigma and bias that is usually you deal with, right? So when we have two communities, communities with and without disabilities working towards each other, so sports really does bring that. I made so many friends. I had so many people tell me that they were able to have other friends or assisting in their gyms with disabilities because they knew what to do or how to do it. And I think that is very important, that we're able to create these break bias through sports, working together. These are very important teamwork values. And yeah, and I think I wanted to end on this photo. The reason I wanted to end on this photo was because when I was growing up in Qatar, the football culture was so strong that I was an 8-year-old cooking football everywhere. I loved Barcelona Xavi, and I got to do a photo shoot with him. And I wanted to showcase this because art was a very nice way to showcase that, yes, as a Muslim disabled woman, included in sports in Doha, so it's representing that sports is for everyone. And the thing is, one of the ending notes to add to all of this is that I really want people to leave with, that please look into encouraging more opportunities for women with disabilities to be included in sports, child development, making sure that there's no different barriers for them to get there. And when I say barriers, that is not just their participation in sports, making sure they have access to transport, to get to those places, that these types of plays do make a big change. And that through sports, we can work together, keeping sports values alive and working together to build an accessible world. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nawaal. That was such a brilliant and thought-provoking speech. You talk about intersectionality and safe spaces, and maybe she's even inspired some of you to take up kayaking. So now I would like to invite our next very special guest speaker on the stage, who is a wizard at channeling willpower to transform destiny. A 2016 Olympic bronze medalist, 5-time senior world medalist, and world champion. She was the first African-American woman to compete in the Olympics in a hijab. But winning Olympic medals just isn't enough. She is also an author, an activist, an entrepreneur, as well as a well-rounded, world-class fencer. So please do give a very warm Doha round of applause for the formidable Ibtihaj Muhammad. Sorry, Nawaal, we want you back on the stage, please, because now we're going to have a conversation between all of us. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. It gives me great pleasure to open this conversation up with both of you, and after which we'll open up to the audience for questions. You know, we're all here at a very, very exciting time. Not only is this the first Muslim country to host the World Cup, but it's also the first World Cup to have female referees and officials. You know, it's so groundbreaking, and it's wonderful to see women professionals in a very male-dominated arena. You know, and I just wanted to ask you, how did you feel seeing those scenes of these female referees, like, you know, like Stephanie on the pitch and on such a global stage? I'll start with you, Ibtihaj, if I may.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate everyone for coming out. And to answer your question, I think that for me, what's more riveting and more exciting than seeing a female referee on the pitch is the World Cup being hosted in a Muslim country. I don't know about everyone else, but for me, I feel like Morocco has already won. And and this feels like such an important moment for us as Muslims, you know, to have our faith be really centered when it comes to such a big sporting event. This is the Olympic Games for the football world and for football fans, and for us to be able to unite around an African nation and an Arab nation, a Muslim nation in Morocco, for me has just been a really exciting moment.
So true. Let's pray for Morocco as well. And Nawaal, how has it been for you watching this World Cup?
I've been connecting with different places around the world due to work. Something I'm working on the debates with. So I was actually able to connect with people in Rwanda, Kigali, and one of the referees actually is from Kigali, Rwanda, and there it's been amazing seeing how many men want to be allies for more women to be referees from their communities. They want more women working in professional sports. So it's very nice to see how we've been having so many men become allies for women to go in professional fields and to create a supportive environment for them to do that. So yeah, it's been amazing. Like, nice to see that.
It is wonderful. Thank you so much. Ibtihaj, you are the first African American woman in a hijab to compete in the Olympics and
the first American woman,
and
regardless of ethnicity.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And your story, of course, begins, in your childhood as someone who comes from a family who loved sport, who loves Islam. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the environment that you grew up in, and how did that set the tone for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I think that for context, I am African American, and culturally, for us, sport is very centric to our family dynamic. We watch sports together. As children, you play outside until the street lights come on. So being active is a really big part of our lives. And so it wasn't out of the norm for me to play a lot of different sports growing up. In fact, in our household, my parents gave us not a choice on whether or not you would play sport. It was more so of a question of what sport would you play. So very early childhood memories of my mom putting the town recreation book in front of us, and you got to pick. So you could try t-ball, you could try tennis. And for me as a kid, in all these different sports, even before I began wearing hijab at 12 years old, I never wore shorts or tank tops. You wear short sleeve or like a capri, tight underneath your team shorts. But I never really felt like I belonged on the team. I always, for other kids, sometimes it's their first time seeing a Muslim or their first time seeing hijab. And at 12 years old, my mom and I were at a stoplight in our town in Maplewood, New Jersey, and we saw fencing for the first time. We saw athletes that were fully covered, so long white jackets, white pants. They had swords in their hand. We thought they were wearing helmets. And I remember my mom saying, I have no idea what this is, but when you get to high school, I want you to try it out. And it was this immediate attachment to the idea of being able to participate in sport, but also be modest at the same time. So I always say that, I didn't find fencing, but fencing found me. And it's been such a big part of my life because of my, attachment and really, I think, the direction in which my life has moved, and it's always been in the direction of faith.
It's wonderful. And I just want to admit right here that I'm a big K-drama fan, Korean drama fan, and there's one series that actually focuses on fencing, and it focuses on young people who get into the Olympics. And it teaches you that it's not just a physical sport, it's also a very psychological sport. And I just wanted you to kind of give us an insight into how you prepare and also what goes through your mind during a bout.
Like any sport, so much of it is mental. When you, especially as a professional athlete, you're devoting so much of your time and energy into your craft, into becoming, a better or the best version of yourself. But when, we look at, say, the World Cup and we say, how can you miss a penalty kick? I promise you it is not as easy as you think. And I read a quote today, actually. I don't even remember who said it because I must admit I'm not a huge football fan. I'm here for the World Cup. But there was an English player, I guess, who maybe in the 80s missed a famous penalty kick. And he said that courage comes for those, who or strength comes from those who have the courage to even, attempt the penalty kick. It's not whether or not you make it. It's whether or not you have the courage to attempt it. So when we look at sport from the perspective of it being a mental game, they say that fencing is, physical chess. So much of it is tactical and you being a step ahead of your opponent. So you can be the fastest, you can be the tallest, but you will lose. You want to be smart, you want to outsmart your opponent all the time. And so you spend so much time reviewing video of your opponent, of yourself, and really having the opportunity to break down the matches piece by piece in order to get better for the next one.
That's a lot of research. That's incredible. Thank you so much. Nawaal, you went through so much in your childhood. You were diagnosed with the Duchenne muscular dystrophy at the age of 6, and then you were forcefully taken out of your school at the age of 10. How do you feel that those early upheavals and those challenges shaped who you were to become, later on in life?
I always talk about, firstly, we can go in different parts. I think at a young age, being diagnosed, I was just very privileged or lucky to be born in Doha, that I had access to that healthcare, that I was able to get my physiotherapy, I was able to get hydrotherapy, and that was just seen as a basic human right. It was not even questioned, and I think a lot of people with my condition don't get those opportunities around the world, that their most basic care to be seen as a human right. So I grew up with that, but when it comes to education, I think regardless of the incident that happened, I think that it really shaped my character. It made me just be more, thoughtful of other people in the community, that, yes, I had my disadvantages, but then I had some privilege, and how do I use that privilege to make sure women, or even just generally everyone in the disability community from different socioeconomic backgrounds, get the same amount of privilege that I was able to have. And if I'm able, so it really taught me at a very young age that, okay, I might have something not available, but I might have something available for me. And how do I use that? And how do I utilize it? And it was something that I never focused on, right? I never thought, I was like, I'm 13 years old, I'll go talk about the importance of education and economics and politics, but there are articles of me talking about that stuff at 13 years old, and so I think it just gave me a head start in society and life. There's memes that showcase kids in worker outfits saying when their CV needs 10 years of experience and they're just graduated. So I think I just got that from a very young age. So yeah, so I know that was disadvantaged, but it made me go in sports. It made me go in comedy. I've been in acting, I've been performing. So it made me go through so many fields and now I just returned to education this year. So I'm all right, I just went through this huge roller coaster, and now I'm back in education now. So it lets me see because a lot of my work was within the region, and I got other people with disabilities in the country, around the region, back in education and giving their parents safe spaces. And now I'm able to now I'll go back into education and see what I can do more in the region and the country. So yeah, it was really hard, but then now that I look at it, that all those tears and all those stressful moments were worth it, and here we are, so that's it.
And you're both just so inspiring, how much determination and drive that you have. And also you're hugely influential on women everywhere. Ibtihaj, you're breaking ground in your sporting field. You've had the spotlight very sharply upon you. Nawaal, you were one of the BBC's 100 most influential women around the world in 2017. How old are you in 2017? That's incredible. My question is, do you feel the weight of responsibility with all of that? And how does being a role model to women make you actually feel? I'll come to you, Ibtihaj.
Ibtihaj, you go ahead.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, mashallah, I don't think of myself in any of those ways. I feel like I'm just... yeah, I mean, I guess it's perspective. I think that we all play a really important role in each of our lives, and we have to take that role really seriously, whether it's in your heart, in your home, in your local community, global community. I think that we all have responsibility to leave the world a better place. And for me, alhamdulillah, I've been really fortunate to do it through sport. And I know that when people think of me, they may think of the Olympics, they may think of winning the medal, but I think that, you know, life is so much more than that. You know, it's about lasting impact and really trying to create meaningful change. So I hope that, you know, there's more to my story than just sport and fencing or even the Olympics, but it's a lot of fun to be able to create change and hopefully help particularly our young people see, you know, themselves in sports, especially as Muslims and as women who wear hijab. We're so often left out of that conversation. So it's my hope that, you know, we have a bigger piece of that pie going forward.
Yeah, and Nawaal, you know, why is representation so important, and how has it impacted you as a public figure?
I think I just never thought I had that effect at all. So I still don't. But what I think, it just gave me just a really nice platform just to. So you know, one of the part of doing like comedy, I love comedy, right? Putting sports aside or activities aside, that it gave me like a chance to like find very creative ways to get a message out. And I think a lot of people unfortunately don't get the chance to do that. But at the same time, it helped me put like on the global stage that, hey, a lot of the disability rights that we see championed again around the world as like these human rights under the UN, but Islamically, like the Quran, the Islam encourages accessibility, disability rights. It was talking in the time in an era in history where disability rights were not regarded of at all. So Islam really brought that on the forefront and thousands of years ago. And that is straight within the Quran, and it lets me showcase to the international community that one of the big things that is there in Islam is disability rights, right to education, protecting all these different rights that the Quran has mentioned, and that it comes from within our society, and how can we champion that every single day, the things that Quran already teaches us. And so that just gives me like a really nice way to showcase my religion to the global community. So that's the one part that's like really nice about representation when I'm able to bring that on, is that disability rights are not charity. They're mandatory rights. That rights should be promoted all over the world, and it comes from within the Sunnah, within the sayings of Prophet ﷺ and Islam. So I feel represented when I look into my religion, because those rights are just there. It's not questioned. It's just mandatory for it to be there. So I feel really represented, because when you're like when growing up, every media was very Eurocentric, so I was never able to find myself even culturally. So when I looked into religion, it just gave me such a nice representation. It made me feel like I am represented, I am heard of. And I think that's what I can say, that representation for me was there in the Quran, and it made me feel very appreciated. It made me want to put that so everyone learns out that representation is there, and how can we highlight it. So that's it. I hope I said it nicely. Put together, sorry.
No, it's all gold coming out from both of your mouths. Thank you so much for that. And we've talked a lot about you both being formidable, well, superwomen, really, but you're still human, of course. And we spoke about barriers that have been broken through in your respective fields. But, you know, as well as the external barriers, what about the internal barriers that you have had to kind of break down for yourselves?
I talk a lot about the obstacles that I faced as an athlete in my memoir, Proud, My Fight for an Unlikely American Dream. Oftentimes when we think of athletes, and this is the perfect venue being here at the World Cup, so many people are like, I cannot believe that he missed, a penalty kick, or that this happened, or, that Ronaldo hasn't scored a goal or anything like that. And it's, nerves play such a big part of sport. And we've all been there. We've all been nervous. Coming off of almost 3 years of COVID, we've all have suffered from anxiety in some form. And these are just human. This is human characteristics. These are just natural part of life, and we all experience. And to me, it's not the anxiety itself, it's how you choose to deal with it. And one of the biggest, I think, things that I did for myself professionally was to seek help and really understand performance anxiety, which is what I suffered from. I think it was I don't remember, maybe 2015 we won, or 2013 we won our first world championship. And I thought, okay, being world number one is a lot of pressure. My first tournament, I think I was ranked 290th or something. I lost my second match, and a few years later, you're world number one. What do you do with that weight? And it affected how I felt mentally. I thought every single time, I went on the fencing strip after that, I had to be the best. I had to be world number one. And so that pressure really, I felt that weight. And so I would show up to a fencing competition. I would be at a Grand Prix in a random country, and my legs would feel like Jell-O. My saber would feel like, 10 tons. And I felt like I couldn't pick my feet up. So I was losing, even though I was one of the best fencers in the world, I was losing my matches very, very quickly. And I sought the help of a professional, a sports psychologist, and she helped me understand performance anxiety, how I could overcome it. And I always reference Muhammad Ali, Allah yarhamu, because everyone thinks of him as being, this amazing athlete, right? And in the US, people always say that he was so cocky, and to me it wasn't that he was cocky. He was really trying to convince himself of his skill. So I had these Muhammad Ali mantras when I was fencing. I would tell myself how amazing I was. I was like, you are the fastest. This girl can't beat you. You're stronger than her. You're faster than her. And I was literally hyping myself up. I'm tricking myself into believing that I was, the best of the best of the best. And that's how I kind of talk myself off of that ledge of performance anxiety. So I think that this is something we can all take into our own daily lives, is to remind yourself of the gift that Allah has given you. And I don't think that we should take any moment for granted. It's really special to have the life that you have, to have the gift of health, to have the opportunity to, show up for yourself and show up for others. So I always try to start off my day with reminding myself of, from a place of gratitude, and reminding myself of the gifts of even just being here and really trying to make the most of life itself. So whether it's sport or in your professional life, whether it's how you show up for yourself mentally, I think it's really important to try to be gracious with yourself, but also be grateful of the gift of life.
That's wonderful. That is really wonderful. Thank you. That's so true, to be a bit more compassionate towards yourself. I mean, as women, you often kind of beat yourselves up as well. You're like, you're not good enough. You lack that self-belief. I mean, and Nawaal, have you experienced that at all, with these doubts or anxieties?
I just wanted to take back on what Ibtihaj made a very good point, is having that talk through with yourself. Because, when you're training in training in Qatar Paralympic Committee, training there every day, one day you're doing great, you're performing in front of everyone great. And then there's someone say that's a influential figure comes in and you're just not scoring, and then you're like, oh, will this happen next time someone comes? And you go through that mantra, and then progressing that to kayaking, parasailing. Because if you ever tried parasailing, the way to wing yourself and to land, it's very stressful. So trying all these different sports, telling yourself, you can do it, you know how to do it, this person doesn't know how to do it. So it's a lot of fake mantra you're talking to yourself. But yeah, it's just every day. But even And also the point with COVID, like pre-COVID, so many things were happening. You knew what to move and how to move, and you wouldn't crack your back. And now with COVID, so many things are opening up. But getting in that same routine is like convincing yourself, okay, you can do it, what to do it, how to do it, you know, you're relearning everything that you do every single day. So how to also not stress yourself out while doing that. But something that I think the point went over my head, so we'll move on to the conversation. So anyways, that's so fun. It literally flew over my head, so we'll just move on.
It's all really important advice, and I'm definitely taking it on board. I think I will now move to the Q&A session, because for the final 15 minutes, there are volunteers going around with a mic. So if you have your hand raised, then I think there's already a lady there.
Assalamu alaikum. I want to say thank you for being an inspiration, but if I'm honest with myself, it'll be an understatement. Living in a world where just being a woman, doing things is a stigma in itself. So being a Muslim and a hijabi, that just raises it to the sky. And also growing up, listening to comments, making you feel like you don't belong in places, or just having like looks that you're crazy, like why are you even doing this? Why are you attempting this? And those were really hard to overcome. But in my head, whenever I pictured people like you, it just gave me the power to keep on doing it. Some of the things were like, try to break the barriers every day, even in, like, I became a paramotor pilot, a scuba diver, doing kite surfing now, tourism, all of these. People are asking me why. Like, I don't even tell anyone about them, but when somebody discovers it, they're like, why? I'm like, I just want to break the barrier. I want to prove that we can do it modestly. We can do it. We can find like a female coach, one in a million. Like, I would travel to a country to find somebody like that. So I want to say thank you very much for that. My question is, you guys have already shared your stories. They've already influenced millions. And I want to know, with this, like, a lot of advantages come from them, but also a lot of pressure is there as well. So what advice do you have? Like, I know it's worth it at some point, but like, how can you, like, I don't know if you got my point. Like, with that pressure, how do you deal with it in a way that you're still achieving what you're doing, but at the same time feeling, healthy? And
okay, so a piece of advice for everybody, for young women, for anyone who's trying to carry on with their drive.
Not just carry on, but also like
pressure.
If you want to influence people, when you're under the scope, when like all eyes on you, I'm sure it's not easy at all.
Okay. Is it for both? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's about influencing others, right? I mean, when you talked about wanting to like be the first and wanting to see, I think what you're referring to really is about like representation, right? I think for so long, especially as women who wear hijab, we've just been longing to see people who look like us, do the things that we love. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about social media, in a way, that we have the opportunity to kind of find our tribe and almost give ourselves like permission to be active or scuba dive, like you said. I don't even know how you find the strength to do that. I'm petrified of sharks. But just even finding, I think, the encouragement and like granting ourselves permission to do all of these things. But I remember for me, like in sport, I always felt like the journey was bigger than me. Like throughout my entire career, I was told that I couldn't do it, that it wasn't possible, that I wasn't fast enough or strong enough, that because I was African American or because I was Black, that I didn't have the mental ability to do a tactical sport like fencing. And I faced a lot of discrimination, but I believe that it was time for there to be a woman of color in the sport of fencing, like be successful. I believe that it was time for a hijabi to be on Team USA, not because I felt like I needed to be the one to do it, but I just kind of had this self-determination, this belief that it was possible. And honestly, so much of it is rooted in just faith, right? Not wanting spotlight, not wanting fame, but really just believing in like Allah's plan for you. So I don't think that it's about necessarily influence or anything like that, but really trying to create and make space so that like the next generation feels like it's possible for them to do, and not have that barrier that society has placed in front of us and said, you know, that this isn't something that is for Muslim women. And it's like, why not? You know, like we're creating, like this is our time, right? And we're really taking hold of that, and so much of it is us just giving ourselves permission to be there because we don't need it from others.
True, thank you. Giving ourselves permission, really important. Nawaal, would you like to add anything?
I think it's just, I think at the end of it, do it for yourself, do as much as you can. I think it's really important to know at the true core that you're doing it for yourself, for women around you to know that they're able to do everything equally in society. So I think that's the only thing that I would like to tell people, because even like, you know, being 24 years old and being in this age of social media, like I'm seeing so many people do it for like, do things, but in a sense of for others or to impress others or what will others think. And I think at true core, to remind ourselves that everything that we can try, okay, if we want to bring goodness into the world, great, but if we're doing things, activities, everything in society, we need to learn at the true core to put ourselves first, if that makes sense, right? Do it for yourself, encourage yourself, and I think that at its true core. I hope I make a point, right? So just to remember that your validation for yourself comes beforehand, before anyone else's validation. Yeah, I just want to point that in, because that's something that I had to learn through, is that regardless of what this person, and mind, I've met a lot of people that are really uncomfortable with my disability, and I get to learn that every single day, trust me, even in environments where I thought it would not happen, but it does. And I'm like, okay, I'm fine with myself. I don't care. I'm doing it. I like it, whatever. So I think that's the attitude that I really want people to pick through, because with this digital era, a lot of the validation has been gone what to others want or what others think. And it's true core, what do we think? Are we happy with it? Can we sleep at night knowing what we did? If you can, great. So that's it.
So important, thank you. Are there any other questions? There is, can you get to, there's one in the middle of the auditorium. Keep your hand raised. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. This question is for Ibtihaj. If you weren't an athlete, what would you be?
Could you repeat that? I didn't quite catch.
This question is for Ibtihaj. If you were an athlete, what would you be?
I love that question. Thank you so much. If I wasn't an athlete, what would I be? You know what's interesting is from such a young age, and I think this comes from my parents, I just always assumed I could do anything. You know, that there was no limitation into how I viewed myself and the things that I could do or be like in this world. And I don't feel like I'm just an athlete. I'm actually retired from sport now and wear quite a few hats. You know, I've always wanted to write children's books. You know, I'm a children's book author. Inshallah, I have my second children's book, The Kindest Red, a story of hijab and friendship, that comes out in January, inshallah. And I started a clothing company. I want to be a fashion designer. I have a clothing company called Luella that I run with my sisters. So I feel like I'm always thinking of things that I want to do, and I always try to approach things from the lens of creating change. Like, how do I like change a space for the better? How do I make it more inclusive? How do I make sure that our girls see themselves? Like, that's always the perspective that I take, and the things that I choose to be a part of. So if I had to do something other than sport, I don't know. I feel like I'm doing those things. I feel like I'm really trying my best to live out life in the way that I want to, and I want it to be on my terms. And yeah, I just always want to create change.
Yeah, you already wear many or hijabs rather than hats. Yeah. So well done. That's amazing. Are there any other further questions? There is a lady who just with a stripy top who just raised her hand, and then I'll come to you afterwards. That's okay.
Assalamualaikum, Ibtihaj. First of all, really appreciate having you as a role model for my daughters. So thank you for that. And a question of growing up, seeing Barbie, etc. It was a great moment for us to have like your Barbie, and not just the Barbie doll, of course, but everything you represent. So how was that process for you? How did you make sure that they did it according to your beliefs and what's important to you, your morals?
This is the Barbie that's installed on you.
One thing that people don't know about me is that I played with Barbies for an uncomfortably long time. I was probably like 15 or so when I stopped playing with Barbies. I used Barbie as a way to escape, or used dolls rather, as a way to escape an older brother. So I spent a lot of time, role playing with dolls and really seeing myself in different spaces, in different professions. I feel like dolls get a really bad rap, where people think that, they don't want their girls to be like princesses or play with dolls. And I feel like dolls are the perfect way for kids or toys in general, a way for kids to really like play out this limitless imagination. And so when Mattel approached me to create a doll, it was presented as, we're going to create a Barbie in your likeness that will live at the Barbie Hall of Fame. So I got to help design, my hair texture or the hijab itself. I wanted my doll to be size inclusive. I was told that I had really big legs when I was a kid, and I was like, what? These legs helped me win an Olympic medal, so they would go on my doll. I wanted the doll to be like athletic, have an athletic build like myself. I wanted the doll to have, like the perfect hijab, to make sure Muhammad was on the back of the sports lame. I wanted the shoes to be the same ones that I wore at the Olympic Games. And I feel like Mattel did such an amazing job in really bringing, this doll to life. But I remember being at Mattel's campus and sitting at a table with some people who work there, and they told me that my doll would be for sale. And when I tell you, I cried really big tears because I remember being a kid in the toy store and not having a doll that looked like me. In my family, my parents only bought us brown dolls. If the doll wasn't brown, we didn't go home with the doll. And it was my mom's effort in making sure that her girls saw themselves in the toys that they played with. So to have the opportunity to change, the landscape of dolls, and for it to be Barbie's first fencing doll, for it to be Barbie's first doll in hijab, I feel like was a moment for our children. And I hope that there's more dolls with hijab in the future, and not just Mattel, but dolls in general, not just fencers, because I feel like it encourages limitless imagination. You can be anything you want.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. So important to see dolls and that representation. People, as a young girl growing up, it's so significant. It's so influential. So it's amazing, and I love the doll. It looks just like you. It's incredible. It really does. Okay, I think there was a young girl in the middle who had a question. I think it was the one with the grey or white jumper hoodie. And
I think that whoever has the mic, try to get the kids the microphone.
This question is for Ibtihaj. What are your habits of success?
Say it one more time.
What are your habits of success?
What are your habits of success? Very good question.
Do you play sports?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. I think that sports are such a great way to teach yourself, great habits for life. As an athlete, if you want to be successful, you have to make time for sport. If you want to be better at anything. You know, if you want to make sure you get a good grade on a test, you know, you have to study. If you want to make sure that, you know, Salat is an important part of your life, you want to make sure that you know, keep a schedule and that you do it every day. And it's the same thing, you know, in sport. If I want to be successful, I wanted to, if I knew I wanted to go to the Olympics, right? And if I wanted it, it's really hard to explain, and I don't know if most people will understand, but I wanted it more than I wanted to breathe. Like, that's the best way to describe it. It was like this really weird feeling of wanting something so bad that you were willing to forego, you know, really big events in your life to go to training or to go to a competition or anything like that. And so I think in order to be successful at anything, you have to be willing to put in the time. So maybe it's not always fun, but it's being willing to work hard to get better to then see the success. And it's always going back to the drawing board, being willing to work hard.
Thank you, so well said, and thanks for that question. Do we have time for one more question? I'm going to go to, oh God, there are so many hands up. Shall I go to that side of the auditorium? I haven't been on that side yet, so could you pass it to the second row? I know. If only we have time.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Rayhana Sattari from Afghan Girls Robotics Team, Afghan Dreamers. And I'm so happy that we are here and you're an inspiration for us. And I have a question about how people reacted to you and both of you in the beginning of your journey. Because when you start to make a change in the world, you receive many different comments. And how were the comments in your opinion, and how they affected your life to be more popular or to have a successful impact about women in the society, especially about Muslims and hijabi women? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nawaal, would you like to begin?
Okay, I think for me it was morely on, so I spoke about the intersectionality of like gender and disability and how that plays a role. So whenever I was in the public eye, either raising awareness or just on social media, speaking about different issues, a lot of the things, even the photo that I showed at the end with the famous footballer, Xavi Hernandez, a lot of the comments that the photographer got sent was, she thought I was bluffing when I was like, listen, you're gonna get a lot of backlash of showing someone that's Muslim, disabled, and a woman. And she thought I was joking. But then her direct messages were flooded with like, why are you showing her? She should not be on media. She should not be on photo shoots. She should not be there performing. And a lot of people were very shocked. But I think at the end of that, I was like, listen, I'm gonna bear with my jokes that firstly, the biggest person that I should be scared of is my parents, other than the government, right? So I'm not doing anything that's against my parents. I'm not doing anything against the government, and I'm not doing anything against my religion. And these are the three most important to my core, is respecting my parents, respecting my country of birth, and respecting my religion. So if I am doing all these things, all right, I don't care what anyone says. So that was the core thing that I had to like keep myself to stick at. What are the core things that I care of? So if those three core things that I care of are fine with what I do and how I do it, I don't care. And like, so that is something we have to like teach ourselves, is that the most important people and things in my life are okay with it. So why should I stop myself? So those are the things that I had to teach myself. The core things, most important to me, matter. That's done. So those were the things that I had to repeatedly teach myself. And eventually I grew a thick skin, because even if you don't get discriminated in one place, it might happen in another. So how do you adapt yourself to not be affected by it? And I guess it's just also a part of growing up. So those are my core things. So
wonderful, thank you. Yeah, and just final reflections on that question.
Yeah, it's really nice to see the Afghan women's robotic team here. I know I got a chance to see you guys when you first arrived in Doha. I think that was a year ago now. So how quickly time passes, subhanAllah, but it's nice to see you again. I love the matching outfits again. I think to your earlier point about learning not to care what other people think is a really, really important piece of the puzzle. I was relentlessly bullied as a kid, and it felt like no matter what I did, I just wasn't accepted. I grew up in a very predominantly white town. We were the only Muslim family. I was African American, and I wore hijab to school. So not only was I bullied for the way that I looked, but also I was a nerd growing up. I wanted straight A's, and also my parents wanted me to have straight A's. So if I wasn't bullied for one thing, I felt like I was bullied for another. And then if that wasn't bad enough, I decided to join the fencing team. And fencing is not a cool kid sport, or at least it wasn't, now it is. But I felt like I was bullied because I wanted to fence. So I learned really early just to like not care what people, think about me. Honestly, life is so much easier that way. I mean, you just learn to do your own thing. You learn to love yourself and not seek validation from others. And for me, staying off social media helps, right? Like, I don't live online. I'm not always scrolling. I feel like I don't need it. It's just not a part of my life. But I do think that a big part of, finding confidence and building confidence for yourself is just not seeking validation from others. And I think that you beautifully said that earlier, Nawaal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Unfortunately, really sadly, that's all we have time for. I wish we could take all your questions, I really do. But, we could talk to these two wonderful women all day, probably for the rest of the tournament as well. But I just want to thank you so much, Ibtihaj and Nawaal, for such a compelling conversation and just such wonderful insights into your lives. And this is exactly what the Exploring Islam campaign is about, is capturing and communicating the lived experience of Muslims. And on a personal level, you've just made me much more proud to be a woman and a lot more determined than I was 90 minutes ago. So thank you so much for incredible contributions. Please join me in thanking Ibtihaj Muhammad and Nawaal Akram.
Thank you.
Now, we have some more exciting events coming up tomorrow and for the rest of the week. We have, if you scan the QR code on the screen to visit the Exploring Islam website, you'll find out more details. Tomorrow, we have Sarah Joseph and Michael Wakelin in conversation about the spiritual crisis that we're facing. Sarah Joseph, OBE, is the editor-in-chief of a Muslim lifestyle magazine called ML. That was a groundbreaking magazine in the UK. And Michael Wakelin was the former BBC Religion and Ethics producer, and will be discussing religion and religious literacy in the media. We also have Imam Siraj Wahaj coming up this week, yes, and Imam Suhaib Webb, and Christiana Bakker, who is the MTV presenter for Europe. So that will also be a wonderful event to come to. What else do we have? We also have Dalia Magahid, who's coming later on. And we have, very excitingly, Sonny B. Williams, who will be joining us for this week. So please do go to the, scan the QR code, and then please do sign up for those events. And please also do make sure that you tag and follow Exploring Islam and the Islam and Muslims Initiative on Instagram and Twitter. Now, a huge thank you to the Exploring Islam Foundation, and the Islam and Muslims Initiative for facilitating this wonderful conversation and this afternoon. Thank you also to our brilliant volunteers and the team here at this wonderful National Museum of Qatar, and again to our speakers. And of course, thank you to all of you for coming and sharing in this really important event. We really hope that we see you at the upcoming events, but for now, we wish you a safe journey home. Okay, salam. Oh. And a final shout out as well to the Afghan Girls Robotics team, known as the Afghan Dreamers. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you.
That was it.
Really, oh my God, I need to get a photo of you guys.